And anyone who cares about actually playing basketball the right way, stop hunting for fouls, Trey. I want to quote Steve Nash, one of the great player, great coach. He says, quote unquote, "That's not basketball."
He has been playing the right way. Looking for fouls is the right way to go. Shooting those threes is the right thing to do. Getting in the lane, dropping those floaters is the right thing to do. If you are the New York Knicks, you got to clamp down.
Now, back to Cofield and Company in the Findlay Toyota studio.
We'll do it live. We'll do it live.
Yeah, every so often during the show, we roll live video, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. So get on up there. You can watch our convo here coming up with Caleb Herring. My God, Bill de Blasio having a little bit of fun. What a bunch of curmudgeons out there ripping on de Blasio. Now, that's not Stephen A. He's a Knicks fan. He's having fun. He gets bombastic. He goes over the top. Knicks are going to start here against Trae Young in about 15 minutes. Early NBA action. First tip of the day was Philly and Washington. Philly's up 13-12 on the Wiz. Caleb Herring, former football player. I know he's a big basketball fan as well. Caleb, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good. That Knicks-Hawks game of all games was my favorite game one of the playoffs, right? Like, honestly. Great. Like, the fan atmosphere in Madison Square Garden was great. Thought Trae Young played great. I think it was Derrick Rose putting on a show, too. I mean, like you said, best time in sports right now is when playoffs are starting in any sport, really. But we got the NHL and NBA going on, so I'm a happy sports fan right now.
Well, and the great thing about the Knicks being in, one, you get a lot of loudmouths back involved in the playoffs. And reality is, of all cities in this country that know less about sports, it's New York. And what I mean by that is they know less about stuff outside of their market. So, like, literally for a lot of the fans, they're like, Trae who? Yeah, Trae Young. He's freaking awesome. So if you don't know who he is, as he's dropping 40 on you, learn basketball outside your own market.
I think the definition of a flagrant foul has changed since the Knicks were in the playoffs. So it's a very different ball game for Knicks fans right now. They're like, why are they calling these fouls for him? Why is he getting? What is that floater? He shoots from that far? Like, it's just a whole different ball game to Knicks fans, right? They've been miserable up there in New York for like a decade. So yeah, it's a new ball game for Knicks fans for sure.
Do you feel more comfy in what you saw out of your Lakers last night?
I do. But at the same time, I don't. I love that they played with a little bit more fire at times, and that's my biggest issue with the Lakers, with this LeBron-led Lakers team, is that the urgency and the fire isn't always there. I think LeBron has the switch. He can turn it on, but not everybody does. And I think Anthony Davis doesn't necessarily have that switch like LeBron does, which is frustrating to watch. And the lack of movement without the ball, I think their offense is very stagnant at times, which I guess can be a product of LeBron James and his greatness and kind of running the offense through him all the time. And then also just, I think, maybe a little bit better job of coaching up basketball instead of relying on being better than the guy you're lined up against all the time. But, encouraged that they responded and came back and got a big win. Even though, it was minus Chris Paul, who can't seem to catch a break in the postseason as far as his injuries go. But I did like the fire, I think, from the team that they showed in crunch time. So good not to go down 2-0 to that team. I think a really good outing in game two.
Yes. On the betting front, very interesting. Yesterday, series price down 1-0. Lakers were minus 110. Now it's 1-1. Lakers are minus 360. Are you that confident that you're willing to lay 36 to win 10?
Well, I mean, just on paper, I think the Lakers should sweep. Like, just looking at the team, especially if Chris Paul's in healthy, I think the Lakers sweeping the Suns was my prediction. If the Lakers came out locked in, laser focused like they could and played to their potential every night, I think they could sweep most of the teams in the Western Conference, honestly. And that's just, the talent that they have at their disposal. I mean, they're a championship team that, in my opinion, improved their roster with just Schroeder and Drummond and Harrell coming off the bench. So, I mean, that's just my talent on paper. If that talent shows up night in, night out, I don't know if I'd be willing to bet on those odds. But still a lot of work, a lot left to be desired from the Lakers as far as playing to their potential. So I'm not a betting man, but that's even a little bit little steep for me. I wouldn't bet that much on the house for me.
On the betting front, can't bet this in Vegas, but you can bet it in faraway places. The favorite to land Julio Jones are the Patriots. If you're Julio Jones, would the Pats be your first choice?
Absolutely not. For selfish reasons. I know you can point to the history of what the Patriots have been able to do with older wide receivers. I mean, you go back to Tim Brown. But more recently Randy Moss and what he was able to do in that year that he had with Tom Brady and the kind of records that they set or the kind of displays they put on with the deep ball. I think you could point to that and say the Patriots know what they're doing. But it's a very different situation going to the Patriots. I don't think they have, especially with Edelman retiring, I don't think they have the depth at receiver to give Julio Jones the space and opportunity he needs to, I think, be a dominant force. And also with a question mark at quarterback as well. It's not the same situation going to New England as desirable a destination for a free agent wide receiver as it was when Randy Moss decided to do it. If I'm Julio Jones, I'm looking for the place where I can go and benefit from the most. And I think, honestly, that place outside of Green Bay, which I think I don't think Green Bay will put together a package attractive enough to go get it. I would say Baltimore is actually a very attractive destination for me. Because of the way that the Ravens are built currently, the way that their offense is structured, Julio Jones will find himself single covered versus single high safeties more often than not because of the threat that Lamar Jackson and that run attack present. So while they don't pass the ball a lot with Julio, when they did pass the ball, he'd be getting the bulk of those targets against more singled up coverage than I think he's used to in his career. He's even at the age of 30 plus, he's getting safety coverage rolled to him. He's still a dominant force out there receiver. And I think in that offensive scheme, you just can't do that and account for Lamar Jackson if you're a defense planning for the Ravens, if that turns out to be the move. So if I'm Julio, I'm looking for situations like that where my career at age 32, where I benefit the most and have a chance to win now. And also to still prove that I'm a dominant force at the age of 32. I think the Ravens are a more attractive destination. Even with the efficiency of Derek Carr and kind of with the weapons with Darren Waller and the offensive weapons that if they were able to keep in a trade deal for him, I think would be more attractive than going to the Patriots. I think the Patriots offensively are a big question mark, and I just don't see that being a desirable destination for a free agent like Julio Jones of his caliber, because basically sign up for double teams night in, night out. I don't think that's what you want to do at 32 years old right now.
Caleb Herring's with us. Played football at UNLV. Was a quarterback. Calls the games for UNLV. In just a couple of months, it's back. We're going to get to the Rebels and some of the schedule changes here inside of 5 minutes. But I want you're great at diagnosing kind of the X's and O's of football and explaining the basics to fans out there. John Abram was talking at camp today about his move to box safety in Gus Bradley's defense. He said it's more suitable to my talents and strengths. What's a box safety?
Well, I completely agree. A box safety is kind of what you would refer to as a strong safety, right? Not necessarily a cover guy, but he's the added guy to the box to near the line of scrimmage to help against run support, kind of be that alley player with less the added responsibility, pass coverage responsibility. And I think that's pretty much what his role should be. And I think as a cover safety, you saw a lot of the deficiencies in his game. The ability to cover and diagnose routes and concepts and be in the right place in coverage was a weakness in his game. And I think the athleticism, the downhill speed, the force he plays with, the aggressiveness, the ferocity that he plays with, I think is more suited for a guy not quite big enough to be a linebacker, but for somebody to have his nose around the ball more often. I think that's what you do when you're a box safety. You're more involved with the action at the line of scrimmage, whether it's running the alley, making tackles in the run game, having the quarterback in quarterback spy situations, or even picking up shallow crossing routes and coming up and making those big hits that we see a lot of safeties make when they're heavy hitting safeties. I think that's more his speed and more his skill set. That's what he's built for. That's how he plays. And that's his nature, is to be that aggressive downhill player. You can't be that at free safety. You can't be a cover safety and be that kind of aggressive player. And it's just that was my opinion of him last year. I mean, when you look at his closing speed, when he's closing down and coming up on run fits, and his ability to blitz and time up blitzes, he's a great blitzing safety. But you can't always have your coverage safety in those blitz packages. Moving into the box, I think, allows for more freedom for him to move within the defense and to blitz if necessary, and also gives him less responsibility in the pass where he's, I think, deficient as a cover safety. So you see guys like Cam Chancellor who had success at that spot where not necessarily in coverage, not necessarily guarding receivers 20, 30 yards down the field, but coming up in run fits, being aggressive and being a presence in the box in that front seven, I think is more his speed. And I think he's right. I think he absolutely is more suited for that role and I think he takes a big step as far as his production and his value for the Raiders defense at that box safety or strong safety position, as opposed to being a free safety or cover safety.
Another young player, first-round pick of the Raiders who needs to step up this year is Cleve Ferrell. Today, First Time Media got a chance to talk to the Raiders face-to-face at camp. He talked about the biggest change under Gus Bradley so far has been, quote, he wants to take a lot of the thinking out. His defense is built on guys making plays and getting turnovers. I feel like I've heard this a billion times from football players when they get new defensive coordinators. What exactly does it mean? Like, does that mean that the past defense, there was way too much thinking and things that you had to process? Like, what does it mean to take the thinking out of it?
Yeah, I think it's a true statement. I think especially on the defensive side, the less you're thinking, the more you're reacting and just playing naturally in the flow of football as an athlete. The less you're thinking and the more you're doing that and reacting in the game, I think the better you'll play and the more you perform to your physical capability, which is what football is. It's the ability to physically either dominate your position or make the tackle, make the catch, whatever. The less you're thinking, the more capable you are doing that. I think a lot of times with defensive coordinators, especially a new system coming in, coordinators and coaches try to scheme the solutions and scheme every answer, every possible answer to the play that the offense is going to run, right? Like you'll have 4 different jobs and 4 different keys that you're reading on every given play that will indicate what you're supposed to do. If the guard blocks down, you do this. If the tackle pulls, if there's a reach block on you, this is your responsibility. Sometimes I think it's better or it helps to have your players just an ability to go against the guy in front of you, win that one-on-one matchup, and go kill the football. And sometimes when you do that, you get the best out of your players. You get the most out of the guys who are just talented, and you get the most out of their natural talent. And one of the areas and the more, I guess, revolutionary areas of the game where this is exploited is when the read option was introduced to football. And, back in, the veer option back in the day, but when now out of shotgun, the read option where the defensive end is literally not blocked. And all that is holding him back from making a tackle on the running back or the quarterback is him thinking about who has the ball, making him make a decision on if he's going to chase the running back or the quarterback. And most of the time when this play was first introduced, you'd see defensive ends freeze and not do anything because they were just thinking. And that's kind of the most open example of it, of what a defender's talking about when he says he doesn't want to think. If you tell a defensive back when you go up against a zone read offense, you're tackling the running back no matter what, and you watch the difference in how he attacks aggressively and goes and creams those running backs, it's completely different. As opposed to when you tell him to think and try to read it, and slow play it is a term they use, and use your mind to manipulate that situation, you end up freezing a lot of times. So it's true, you want to pull back the reins a little bit and let your players go and let them play and react as natural football players and use their physical ability to win those one-on-one matchups and make tackles in open space, create turnovers, and wreak havoc. But at the same time, you do want to teach some sort of scheme and technique. So I do agree that it can benefit. And with Gus Bradley, like Cleve Ferrell said, it definitely is one of the things he feels, that he's not thinking as much. He's able to just play and rely on his natural talent to win his matchups. And I think you do want that, especially when you got guys like Cleve Ferrell and not to mention John Abrams, who is one of those players you want to just let go and not have him think too much. I think it does benefit to have a scheme that's less about thinking and more about your physical ability.
Caleb Herring's with us. Let's talk about UNLV football schedule changes that were released today. So they're going to open on a Thursday, and now with added TV, and that's a good thing. That's what the program wants. They want exposure, so a ton of games now on CBS Sports Network. But what that means is they've now got 3 games in conference on Fridays. So September 24th, Friday at Fresno State, October 29th, Friday at Reno, which kind of sucks in a way. Always like that game to be at the end of the season. And then the season closer is Friday at Air Force, November 26th. So that there's 2 ways to look at this. You will be playing on a short week because they have Saturday games before that, but then you get a long week after because then you play the following Saturday. How do players look at this? So that's the first thing. I want to know how the players look at the Friday games, the exposure, but the short week.
I think the exposure part of it, especially the Thursday games to open the season. I know I played in a Thursday game to open the season where you're kind of the first game on, right? Everybody has that itch to watch college football. So if you're on a national TV slate, which I have been before on a Thursday night game, then you know you're going to have eyes on you. You want to really show out and show up for the fans watching and things like that. So there is that aspect of it. Friday games and Thursday games are a chance, especially a smaller school, to get the spotlight and have eyes on you on a national scale and kind of make a name for yourself if you ball out, so to speak. So as a player, you're thinking that. That's definitely in the back of your mind. It is a little different, I think, on the front end to get a shorter week of preparation. But at the same time, it kind of helps because you have to lock in and laser in a little bit quicker. You don't have a lot of time to I guess, Friday is usually a walkthrough day, kind of a non-work day anyway. So you're not doing much Friday except for trying to not be distracted or limit the distractions, usually being around the team all day and walkthroughs and meetings and stuff at the hotel or wherever if you're at home, just trying to lock in. And Friday is kind of an anxious day when you're just kind of waiting for game day. So being able to let it all out on Friday instead of, waiting that day until Saturday or Saturday night may be beneficial in some ways. And then having that extra day of, recovery on Saturday where you get to chill and watch the other college games around the country that maybe you don't normally get to watch because you're prepping for your own game. That's kind of a cool little perk of playing on Friday as well. You get your weekend, so to speak. As college athletes, college football players do not have a weekend during football season. So you get to, observe and watch the other guys around the country. So there's benefits to it that maybe not schematic. But like you said, that extended week of preparation for the next opponent, if you don't have back-to-back Friday games or if you don't have another short week turnaround for that does benefit the coaching staff. You can take Saturday as coaches to give the players a day off and not have them come into the facility and just really focus on breaking down and game planning for that next opponent. That extra day does help. And, if you come up against somebody who's coming maybe off of a short week themselves, then you'll take any added benefit you can get, especially if you're UNLV, looking to make some noise with, first time full off season, and really trying to have your season turn around from last year. Any little edge you can get will be beneficial. So, and then, like you said, the national spotlight, I think, is the biggest thing for UNLV. Making this adjustment, getting on CBS for 7 games this season is huge. The exposure factor for Allegiant Stadium, of course, I'm sure has a lot to do with it. But then for a new program, a new look for Coach Arroyo, and really trying to make a name for themselves in the college football landscape, especially in the Mountain West, I think making that adjustment to those games is worth the sacrifice or the downside when you look at the pros that come along with it as well.
Last 2 minutes. I mean, again, the exposure is great. The sucky part is all Friday games. All the games that got changed to Fridays are road games. So that's kind of tough. Yeah. The over/under win total was released for UNLV by one sports book. They have them at 1.5. My God, there's not 2 wins. There's not 3 wins. There's not 4 wins on the schedule.
It's kind of tough. In my opinion, because I think this number is based on last year, obviously, when the season. And I think, taking into consideration the fact that UNLV didn't have those non-conference games to lean on, number one, where, you maybe have a lesser opponent that you maybe feel a little bit more evenly matched with. And then on top of that, the schedule, whether we predicted it or not, knew it going into the season, that UNLV played last season, the games that they did play in the Mountain West were pretty much the top teams in the conference. I mean, if you go look at the results and where everybody finished in the conference, where San Jose State finished, was not expected. San Diego State, of course, is always a top dog. Reno and the talent that they had last year, and of course Fresno State. Those teams that they did play in conference were the top dogs of the conference, so to speak. And the winnable games that they had on schedule, I guess Colorado State would be considered one of those that were canceled because of COVID. So there wasn't a lot of space for error. And of course, the pandemic impacting every team differently. UNLV, I think, took a very heavy impact. And I think bettors and the odds makers are really taking that heavy into consideration when they lay that number out there. But there's the Eastern Washingtons, the Texas